What sign can be given to the people of this generation that the Lord is risen? When the community of faith reaches out to those who are suffering, especially the sick and the poor, this is a sign of God's charity and love, which is life-changing. Today we celebrate St. Camillus de Lellis, born in Venice about the year 1550. He had a disease on his leg that never was remedied. At age 17, he went to the St. Giacomo Hospital for incurables as a patient, but also to work there. But after a few months, he was dismissed because of his poor attitude. He liked to strike up quarrels and fighting among other staff members. So he went off to the army of the Kingdom of Venice for 3 years, and he became addicted to gambling. So he gambled away all his possessions, all his money. He had nothing left. And then he decided to try to join the Capuchins, the Franciscans who take the vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. But then he was dismissed because of the sore on his leg. He went back to the hospital, San Giacomo, but then he was dismissed again because of his attitude. So here is someone who has great difficulty with social interaction and cooperation and collaboration. But then he decided to go back to San Giacomo Hospital again, and this time he stayed. And in fact, he became the administrator, and he upgraded the care of the sick there at San Giacomo. He required great cleanliness. And if we think about going back hundreds of years, how that was a very great challenge. Eventually, he decided to leave his order, that particular hospital, and begin his own order. And now, the brothers and the priests would not stay in the hospital, but they would go into the streets. They would go to places where people were dying. For example, in Naples, there were ships in port, and in the ship would be the plague. The ship would be in quarantine, but he and his brothers and priests would go there to serve the needs of those who were dying, to pray, to give the last rites, to reconcile soldiers and sailors to God before their death. He and his priests and brothers would go into places where there was war, and they would tend to those who were wounded and dying. So he had great concern for those who might be considered lost souls, but he reached out to give them hope. And eventually, Camillus became very sick, and he had to be a patient in his own hospital. But even there, he would get out of his sickbed and try to help, serving others. So a great testimony to charity and love for those who are sick and poor. Here in Pittsburgh, 175 years ago, Mercy Hospital was founded by the Sisters of Mercy. And just a few years after the founding of the hospital, in 1845, there was a typhoid epidemic in this country. And the sisters set up a private special quarantine ward for those victims. The sisters would go in. They would take care of those who were infected. And after a year's time, most of those patients recovered, but 4 of the sisters died because of their service in that particular ward. So the Sisters of Mercy continued that wonderful love of the sick, even putting themselves at risk, even giving their lives to serve those who were sick and dying. And as we hear in that first reading so beautifully, Camillus became a person of humility, to do the right and love goodness. And so we want that attitude to be in us, to do the right and love goodness, and to do whatever we can to reach out and bring comfort and consolation to those who are forgotten, those who are suffering, to bring them the comfort and consolation of Jesus himself.